Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Kevin Bloch, CTO for Cisco Australia and New Zealand.
Good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for coming. Every year, for the last 10 years, I've been casting the net right out. I do a lot of homework over the last few months. There are all the references in the back, 700 or 800 of them, so you can have the URL at the back. I do this for two reasons. The first is to share with you, our customers, our partners, and our own staff, the context in which Cisco's making investments in our own technology and some of the many acquisitions that you've been hearing about. Why are we doing this? Which transitions do we think are meaningful to us and our customers? And which ones are we going to let hit the wall? That's the first reason. The second reason is we'd love your feedback. We don't, expect you to agree with everything. So we'd love to know from you whether we're on the right track, making the right investments or not, and if not, why not? So that's the setup. Now, before I talk about the top 10, a couple of things. One is I'm not going to do 10 because I've got a stricter time limit, so I've only got 30 minutes. So I'm going to talk about 6 of them. Forgive me. But in my opinion, last year, 2017, was a tipping point for the world. In fact, we saw a new world order. You probably recognize these two friendly faces, Sir Frank Lowy on the top and Rupert Murdoch below, both of whom are world-renowned luminaries in their particular sectors, having done a massive, amazing job in shopping malls, in the case of Westfield, and the case of the media, Rupert Murdoch. But it was uncanny, in 1 week, almost the same week, both of them threw in the towel and sold their businesses. In the case of Westfield, to Radamco, and in the case of Murdoch, he sold Fox to Disney. And there ended a real era of shopping malls and retail as we've known it, and broadcast television and the print media as we've known it. It shut that, chapter, and those two leaders sort of said to the rest of the world, okay, the next phase is about to begin. Everything about those two sectors have changed. Now, it wasn't just in those two sectors. Take a look at politics. Northern Europe, the US election, some good, some not so good in terms of fake news and some of the things that are going on in terms of, I used to say allegedly the Russians. It's now absolutely the Russians in terms of disrupting that. And then, of course, the financial world is in massive, both constructive as well as, in some cases, disruptive upheaval. We'll talk about crypto in a moment, but fintechs are having a massive constructive influence in the whole financial world and financial community. And again, we're going to talk about the transformation of our payment system onto our mobile phones and going digital. But then we go to the left-hand side, and bottom left, you'll notice that the 3 logos that I've put up there are actually not General Motors, they're not Ford, they're technology companies. They today are the leaders in the motor vehicle industry. If you've heard me talk about the top 10 and predictions in the past, last 3 years I've been saying this. The motor vehicle industry is a beacon for all other industries that are going to be turned upside down by technology. And you can see it here. They are a higher market cap than the leaders of the last 3, 4, or 5 decades. And you can see in the top, the FANGs from the west, and then from the east, BAT, Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent from the east. And the thing about this is last year was the first year ever that the 6 most valuable companies on earth are technology companies. And check out the growth from 09 to 16, or 18. The lowest is 330%. Amazon, 2,200% growth. This is amazing. And I'll be standing next year and I'll bet you there'll be more than 6 in the top. Right? The world is going through this massive transformation. And the technology that we're talking about at Cisco Live and that you are all responsible is essentially what is changing everything. Continents, governments, organizations, companies, you and me, and how we live our lives. Massive transformation going on. Now, it's a new world order for IT. It's not just, we're isolated from all of this. It's happening to us. You don't have to read all of these graphs, but I'm here to tell you there are references to it. But Gartner's telling you and me that the IT industry is growing 4.3% to $3.7 trillion. Really? Really? Those graphs tell you this. Every single one of them are in decline. PCs in decline, handsets in decline, data centers in decline, servers. We've worked out how to optimize. We don't need as many servers, and we're putting a lot in the cloud anyway. Switches, we're on Wi-Fi. How many of you plug in your PC anymore? And your mobile phones? We're using wireless. And smartphones are actually in decline, plateauing and in decline around the world. So how is it that the analysts are telling us we're growing, and yet we're actually not? We're not. Here's my view. The IT industry is actually shrinking as we've recorded it. This is the tipping point. As we've known IT, it's actually contracting. I mean, if you're using SD-WAN, you don't need the whole infrastructure as you've used it in the past. If you're using public cloud, you don't have to buy a server. So what is happening is the right-hand side. And that is technology that we've known it is transforming all of these other lines of business. In the case of transportation, we're now instrumenting the road and the rail. In the case of the utilities, we're instrumenting the distribution of electricity, of gas, of water. Bridges are being instrumented. Mines, we're now talking about IT in the non-carpeted zone, in the mine itself. And we, Cisco, are seeing an order of magnitude more technology going into operations than we have in the IT of yesteryear. So we're going through this tipping point as well. And you'll see some signals as I go through this presentation. Now, as man discovered the flame and gave him warmth, that flame also burned down many, many houses. So when we see these transitions, we've got to watch the side effects, the collateral damage. I call it economic dislocation. Last year I cited this. You've probably read a lot about it, but I'm going to give you a number. The World Economic Forum last year said, we're wiping out 7 million jobs. And by the way, take a look at my references in the back. It's absolutely happening. We're wiping out many, many, many jobs. But we're replacing them with 2 million jobs. Okay? I'm going to play you this clip from Andrew Thorburn. He's the CEO of NAB, and in November last year, he made an announcement to the industry about a transformation going on in the bank. And listen to the numbers and listen to what he's doing in the bank.
Industry is going to have to significantly reshape our workforce, and that's what we're facing into. So what we're doing is we're simplifying the bank, and as we simplify it, we automate processes and things move to digital channels, we will need less people. And as that happens, we estimate there'll be 6,000 people less needed in 3 years' time. Having said that, we're hiring 2,000 people, with different capabilities, data scientists, AI, robotics, automation, technology people, digital people. So the net will be 4, and that's just a reshaping that's going to happen.
My question to you, my question to Andrew Thorburn is, do we have 2,000 data centers hanging around? In other words, he might have headcount. I don't know that we got the skills. Serious issue. And in fact, these are the issues. I'm not trying to solve them. Risk. We have never seen an era of cybercrime like we see it today. It is in the top 3 threats to the world. Aside from natural disasters and weather, now cyber, human-made, is the 3rd biggest threat to mankind. That's how serious it is. And you hear a lot about AI. You've read a lot about AI. It has a side effect. Who is accountable for the algorithms that are now making decisions for you, the customer? Greg Metcalf, the outgoing chairman of the ASIC, says you are, humans are. The European Union is legislating in 2018, that's this year, you are, humans are. Big issue. I'm not trying to solve it here, I'm just saying. And finally, a new one, which I call attentive cognition. Some people call it digital distraction. So now listen carefully. A lot of studies, again, look at the back, the research in the back. A lot of studies have shown that your cognitive intelligence, your ability to be switched on, listen carefully, is inversely proportional to the distance between you and your phone. In other words, the further away you are from your phone, the smarter you are. Now that sounds funny, but let me give you some numbers. In 2016 in the United States, there was a spike. 20% pedestrians were killed. Another number. More than 50% of fatalities in the US was from a car driving in a straight line. Go figure. So it's a very serious issue. From whichever way you look at it, as a manager, as a parent, as a whatever. Brings me to number one. Notice augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence. The singularity we're talking about, a few decades hence. What are we talking about in the next 12 months? This graph I've been showing for 2 or 3 years now and basically shows the 3 phases of the internet. We got online. Second phase, we had the joys of smartphones and social. And now we're in the thick of instrumenting the world with the Internet of Things, going to 50 billion things being connected. But the punchline is this. We're going through an inflection point where in the past, and I'm talking about forever in the past, all decisions were made by you and me and my brain. But mankind has worked out that actually there's a big divergence between your brain and what machines can do. So we're really now pushing a lot of data as we move to 2030 into those machines so that we can do 1, 2, or 3 of these things. Number one, augment our ability to make decisions quicker and faster and smarter. Number 2, to eliminate humans out of that loop altogether. And number 3, to predict the future. And the way we're doing it is using maths. Just really traditional old maths, statistics, and probabilities. And the more data you get, if those of you have studied maths, the more accurate your predictions are going to be. That's the simple thesis behind the digitization of the world and leveraging machines to help us do stuff better. Funny thing about humans, we follow this thing called the inverse square law, and that is when we learn a task, we actually speed up the process, we get smarter at it, we can do it really easily. That's not the case with code. Traditional linear programming in computer science. You take Windows, you take iOS, you take Android, it gets slower, right? Yeah, it gets patched, but it gets slower. So computer scientists have said, well, there's got to be a better way, and there is a better way, and it's called AI, and there's a completely different methodology that we use in computer science to tackle this problem. And I'm going to give you an example of that in a moment. But it's not just about the software, it's about the hardware. The actual architecture of the x86 is really no longer fit for purpose for the grunt that we need going forward for pattern recognition. So you can see here the TPU, the tensor processing board from Google, that supposedly processes 10 times faster than anything on Earth, in particular for patterns. Similarly, you've seen a spike in NVIDIA and GPUs for the same sort of reason, starting off with game theory, but now moving straight into the core of where the whole industry is moving. So a couple of years ago, I shared with some of you a story around DeepMind, which was acquired by Google, and that piece of code beat the world champion in Go. Roll the clock forward. What Google's now done is called it Alpha Zero, reset, gave it a different task, and said, now you're going to play chess. Gave it the basic rules of chess, but didn't teach it how to play chess better. What it did was it got it to play itself. Within 4 hours, it beat, using, you can see different programming techniques, neural networks, reinforcement algorithms, and within 4 hours, it beat Stockfish 8, which was at the time in 2016, the world computer, I'm not talking about human, world computer chess champion. Look at the numbers. Look how many moves the linear programming method took. 3 orders of magnitude more than the winner. So again, we're going through a very big change and a sort of fork in the road in the whole area of computer science. That's my swimming pool. Why the hell is this guy showing you my swimming pool? Because I'm going to explain intuitive system in the most simple way. Anybody who doesn't have a pool will know that all of us who have had pools in the past operated in the most stupid way possible, right? We have the set and forget. We set the pump on at 6 and set it off at 10, and then we do it again at night. Independent of what the chemicals are doing, whether it's raining, whether it's cold outside, we just do it. And the beneficiaries of that are the chemical companies. Well, and by the way, think about what else is happening in your lives that this same analogy applies to. So 2 PhD chemists got together and said, there's a better way, and they founded this company called Pooled Energy. So this is a true story, it's in my pool. And they said, this AI, augmented intelligence, we can do stuff. We can measure 50 different parameters in his pool, water flow, temperature, chemicals, send those parameters in real time, every second, into the cloud, not at 6 or at 10 p.m., every second. And based on what we'd like the chemical behavior of the pool to be, we can do something about adjusting the pump as well as changing the chlorine factor, the chlorinator. True story, it's been in my pool for about a year and a half, very successful. The point I'm trying to make is this curve you'll see a couple of times throughout my presentation. We're moving from an open loop world. Open loop is when humans are involved. Bad, bad. Yes, it has problems with jobs, I know that, and we can talk about that. But we humans introduce lots of errors and lots of inefficiencies. So we're quickly removing humans from as many tasks as we possibly can into this closed loop, self-healing system. That is, ladies and gentlemen, the essence of what the network intuitive is. So when you see it out in the stand, this is exactly what it is. What's the context of my pool? I need sensors to measure that. I'm digitizing stuff, a lot of metrics in my pool. And then I'm sending it to a computer, not to a human being, that knows about these metrics and knows what to do with intent to set pH levels and temperature and water flow and all that sort of stuff. That's exactly what we're doing in the network. Now, this movie is about encrypted traffic analysis. This is a world first whereby Cisco can actually look at a traffic through a pipe, and we can, without decrypting and using pattern matching and machine learning, determine which of this traffic is bad and which one is good. So that's ETA, but I'm not actually showing it to you for that reason. I'm showing it to you because it's a great example of exactly what I've just talked about in terms of a closed-loop system. Human beings are not involved in this. So we're measuring the traffic and doing something with it.
Look at the crow's feet around his eyes and the pushed-up cheeks. He's happy. Corner of her mouth? Contempt. They're in for an interesting night. I don't need to listen to these people's conversations. I can tell what they're hiding based on their body language. Now, what if we could use that method to detect encrypted threats on the network just by looking at packet flow body language?
Packet flow what?
Oh yeah. Welcome to the future, Jimbo. It's called Cisco Encrypted Traffic Analytics, and it identifies suspicious behavior within encrypted traffic without decrypting it. How? When hackers hide malware inside encrypted traffic, Cisco can identify that suspicious behavior by looking at the metadata of the flow. Using machine learning and analytics, it actively learns what's normal behavior and what isn't. And so, as hackers adapt, so do you. And that, keeps you one step ahead. Yeah!
From an engineering point of view, we are doing that across every single business unit across Cisco. I've skipped one. I'm going to go straight into the Internet of Things. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but for all of those of you who've been reading the hype with IoT, I hate to tell you this, we are on record as saying 75% of IoT projects are failing. They're failing. And there's some really good reason for it. So in order to explain it, I'm going to use a farm. But I should point out that what I'm talking about in agriculture applies to virtually every other sector, smart cities, mining, you name it. Poor old farmer's got a lot of physical assets, as you can see, whether it's water, the soil, livestock, cropping, whatever it may be. And of course, the IT industry has hit that poor old farmer. I've got a great sensor solution for you. And he's got now a kaleidoscope of vendors coming at him. Never heard of them before, but they've all got the best solution. And pretty soon, what starts happening is he's sitting there saying, this is very complicated. I've got, no idea of how to merge the data between them. They don't have much idea of distance, which is a major issue on a farm. The data is insecure. What about power? It's not like a mobile phone anymore. You can't just go and change batteries or charge it. And of course, he's sitting there saying, actually, this IoT thing is actually putting me backwards. And this is happening in every single sector. So Cisco, as you heard from Rowan, has taken a different approach. We call it a platform approach. And basically, the platform provides connectivity. It hosts the applications. And it also sorts out the data and happy farmer. So you hear a lot from Cisco moving to this platform approach. for this very reason, to bring standards to bear, to bring security into it, and to be a host for both the data and the applications. I want to share with you an example, true story. This is on a corner. This is only a few weeks ago in Adelaide, another world first. When you look at the traffic management problem, actually the smart city problem, the biggest problem is congestion management. The Australian government has put a number on that. It's about $2 billion per annum in economic and social costs for a city the size of Melbourne or Sydney. $2 billion per annum, right? The only way to remediate is to increase the number of lanes, which means knocking buildings down, knocking houses down, uprooting the inhabitants, hundreds of millions, if not billions of cost, and it's hugely disruptive. So we came up with a different solution to instrument the road system, and in here you can see 6 mobile trailers, lots of equipment. At the top of it is a LiDAR, light detection and ranging technology, which I'll share with you a video in a moment. But LiDAR, you might have heard on autonomous vehicles. They were about 70, 80,000. The one we're using here is at the top there. It's about eight grand, 8,000. I've seen the next version. It's solid state, and it's in the hundreds of dollars. And you'll see the difference between what LiDAR does and video. But there you see it. Now, what we're actually doing here with those 6 mobile vehicles on the site itself is literally measuring the vehicles going through down to 2 centimeters in real time. We're measuring people in 2 centimeter accuracy in real time, feeding that back to the cloud, which in this case is fog, it's on the edge, and in real time changing the traffic lights to smooth out congestion, and thereby push out any need to reconstruct the road and any capital program. So again, you can see that cloud. So let me just play to you the LiDAR movie so you can see, because I think LiDAR is going to be an incredibly important sensor going forward.
We just have really an unprecedented level of range and resolution that can finally start to allow you to see with clarity as to what's going on in 3D. So the cool thing about this is that it knows the exact distance to every object out in the field of view. It knows exactly where it is positioned in 3 dimensions, and that's opposed to, like a camera that can only see something, in 2 dimensions, doesn't know where objects are positioned.
Crypto, every conversation around barbecues nowadays is, did you buy Bitcoin? Okay, before I get there, cash is almost dead. Why am I saying that? Because if you look at China, right now, more than half of their GDP is already digital, is already cashless. Driven by Baidu, Tencent, Alibaba. It's already happened. If you look in North America, that's catching up. We're catching up. The head of digital from ANZ was saying much more than half of their transactions in this country are already digital. So this is happening. We're going cashless, no question about it. So we've moved from bartering and hard currency to digital, right? So from physical on the left to digital on the right. And then along comes crypto, and of course, some geeks were involved with it. And then it went to $20,000. Now, and you can see the market cap at 8. All of a sudden, everybody's attention was there. And by the way, it's around 11 grand. I don't know about you, but if I put an investment of $1,000 down in a year's time, it was 11 grand, I wouldn't think that's bad. I hear a lot of people whinging about it. I'm thinking, what? 1,000 to 11? They're not bad, right? It's pretty serious. Having said that, there are a lot of people who are really viciously anti-crypto. This is Professor Nouriel Roubini, a very serious player in economics if you've read his books. Clearly, Bitcoin and other cryptos represent the mother of all bubbles. And this is Charlie Munger from Berkshire Hathaway. It's a noxious poison. Let's take a step back. The other thing you hear is this: blockchain good, Bitcoin bad, right? Okay, my view. We are currently where the internet was in 1994. That's where we are. We're a long way to go. Did the internet, happen? Absolutely. It's transformed our lives. And will this happen? Yes, but it's going to take some time. We need regulation. We need to sort out what's going on with the underworld. There's a whole bunch of issues. Absolutely, but it's going to happen. And it's going to happen for this reason. The change in the world, if I park technology, is because the individual is frankly pissed off with governments and with institutions. We have a Royal Commission in Australia on the banks, the people that we're supposed to trust. The Panama Papers shattered any form of respect for some prime ministers, and I could continue. So there's a whole world out there that are saying, why should I trust everything we've known in the past? Now, I've been doing a course on blockchain, and you read a lot about blockchain, but the one thing that jumped out to me was this: no double spend. As we move to digital, the chance of double spend is 1 in 2 to the power 132. Don't work it out. It's a really, really big number. Much more trustworthy than humans, for example. So that's one really important reason. And the second reason is this: there is no intermediary. Blockchain does have a single source of truth, but it's distributed. And no one organization owns the blockchain. And all of a sudden, trust may emerge. So that's my view. Now, to give you an example, a real example of how one gentleman, his name is Juan Bennett, has really moved this needle forward. And this is just an example. He invented the protocol IPFS, the Interplanetary File System, which gives you a locationless address. I won't get into the detail, go and look it up. Really important in terms of disrupting multiple industries. And his thesis in this example is all of us have got zettabytes, that's 10 to the power 21, of data storage sitting doing nothing, doing absolutely nothing. What if he came up with this company using IPFS that incentivized all of us using tokens that you can, so the name is Filecoin, incentivized using tokens that you can exchange for other crypto, you can exchange for fiat currencies, right? What if, and he's doing this now, he made this price of storage way, way cheaper than any other way you can buy it. Think of the transformation. As I said, there's a tipping point going on. And by the way, he hates the public cloud. He's saying we're beholden to storage in the public cloud, and there's all this zettabyte sitting out there. So great example. Take a look at it because it's quite transformational. You've just heard from the previous speaker, or some of you have, on 5G. Here's my version. No question, the growth and our insatiable demand for data on our mobile phones is, in our projection, 8 times growth in the next 5 years. By 2023, 110 exabytes every month. 70% will be video. So there's a real massive push from the supply side to really give you more speed, more speed. And the second part is the user experience. And of course, the games are going to be a showpiece, whether it's the previous Winter Games, Winter Olympics, the Commonwealth Games, you'll hear a lot about, the 2020. We are going to be inundated with 5G and 5G NR. And the reason 5G is really being pushed out is that the 3GPP Standards Organization has accelerated the standardization with the first release of 5G NR new radio 6 months ahead of what everybody thought would happen. So it's out there and the race is on. But I want to say this. We're using high frequencies which kind of don't operate that well in buildings like this. So Wi-Fi is going to be there for a long, long time. There's going to be a brother-sister relationship, no question. One's licensed, one's unlicensed. We're already about to announce .11ax, which is multi-gigabit, free, unlicensed spectrum. Lots of investment already there. You're going to see these two in parallel for a long time. And of course, the race is on. Every North American vendor is trying to beat the other North American vendor to be first. The same's happening here between Optus and Telstra. The big V is kind of on the sidelines at the moment. The vendors are at it, including Cisco, where we announced a vRAN, which is kind of cool, right? But I think the headline that I thought was the most outstanding of all has to be this one. I talked about speed, but it's also user experience. Last year, I talked about VR, virtual reality, augmented reality. Apple, Google, everybody's gotten really big time into that. I want to talk about Magic Leap and mixed reality. And this is kind of interesting because when you see things, what's happening is photons are bouncing off that chair into my eye. That's why I know there's a chair there. What if I could spoof those photons coming into my eye, which is exactly what Magic Leap does. Now, the way they explain this is when you change the way you see the world, you can change the world you see. I'm still not making real sense, am I? It's pretty hard to really understand what we're talking about. So watch this movie. It's only 8 seconds, so don't look at your phones. Watch the movie. It's real quick. Watch this. That's mixed reality. Number 10, M&A. Now, normally I talk about which company is going to buy which industry is going to go into which one. I think there's two big things on the horizon that we really need to think about. The first one is the tax repatriation into the United States. It's estimated more than $2.5 trillion US dollars is sitting there. You can see who's got it. Just between Cisco and Apple, there's $300 billion that has been committed to go back into the US. Now, just to give a number on that, the Australian government has said, we'll lower corporate tax. It's going to cost us $60 billion. Those two companies could pay that 6 times over already, just to give you some number. That's a massive number. It's going to invest in, impact investment, venture capital, innovation, acquisitions, you name it. The second one is what I call the double A paranoia. From the West and from the East, Amazon and Alibaba. They are really disrupting and dominating their industry, but not because they got a great website. It's much more insidious than that. Again, notice this curve. And here's the punchline. Alibaba's got several hundred million customers. They know exactly the demographic, who you are, where you are, which country you are, and what you're buying by the second. They also, as does Amazon, have millions of vendors, sellers, that depend on Amazon to sell their goods and ware. They have full transparency of every bit of data going through that side as well. And guess how these companies, what's the machinery, what's the active machinery of those companies? Amazon Web Services. Pretty serious issue for the globe that we need to deal with, but gives you some idea as to where we're at. And of course, we've got our own Russell Kogan, who is a shining light because it's not all doom and gloom. There are people who can beat them. So there's the top 10. There is the reference. Before we go, I just want to share with you a couple of things that pull together some of the things that Rowan talked about, the voice user interface, augmented intelligence, and many of you are in technical support, so I thought this use case may appeal or may ring a bell.
Hello, do you wish for technical assistance?
Oh, God, I hate these.
Sorry?
What?
How dare you speak to me like that?
Sorry. Can I have technical assistance, please?
Putting you through, cow.
That was the top 10. Thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of the World of Solutions. Cheers.